Gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Well, maybe not all ages. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of young adult ages. Yeah, that's better. Welcome to Ryan Ride Mechanic Channel. Today's episode is going to be really fun, so I want to get right into it. So let's go. No time for the intro.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Okay, well, I guess there was time for the intro. Alright, today's episode I wanted to talk about the Generation 1 Freefall rides that INTAMIN built. These things were pretty fun, they're pretty amazing. They're the type of freefall ride that a lot of people went on early on. This was before they were replaced with the giant drop towers. They were the ones that had the big curve at the bottom. So let's look at what one looks like real quick. Let's look at a cycle. Okay, so we're going to be lifting the coach up here. Up, up, and away. The slow ascent up the tower. It makes its way up to the top. Then the coach is set down into the horizontal transfer position. At that point, the coach advances out to the end of the track. The end of the track of the horizontal transfer position is a free fall position, and it's ready to go down the drop track. Now once it hits that curve at the bottom and comes out into the service brakes, this is in the run out, and hits the reversing brake, the trap door opens and the wheels go down into the slope. The clutch slowly lets the vehicle down as the vehicle comes upright. It's a very tricky process. As it levels it down, it tries to right itself and it pinches the upper wheels in that curve and causes the vehicle to right and then roll backwards under its own. Now, as a shout out, thanks to everyone who helped me with this video. When I started, I had a rough idea of how these machines worked, but I wanted more information. I didn't have all the pieces myself to the puzzle, and I wanted more information that was more factually correct instead of just lots of guessing involved. So I reached out to, on YouTube, I reached out to anybody that had information on these rides, and a handful of people responded, so that was pretty great. So before we get started, a big shout out to one of my viewers. His name is Rich. He was an actual ride operator for the Demon Drop. So he gave me a ton of information that I previously didn't have. He gave me a very good in-depth knowledge of how the ride was from the operational standpoint of view, it was fun to work with him on this because we communicated back and forth over my email, and he would fill me in on all sorts of stuff, and then he would run into questions, and I was able to answer some of those questions for him, and we kind of had two pieces of the puzzle, and we were able to put them together, so that was pretty awesome. Okay, so let's drop into this video, and hopefully we'll have you on your back in no time. Huh? Some of you got it. Okay, growing up in my home park in Northern California, there was one of these rides there. There was two at the Great America Parks. They were clones of each other. Both rides were called The Edge. I was at Northern California, so there was a INTAMIN Generation 1 Freefall there called The Edge. This was replaced by the Drop Zone Stunt Tower. And when they did that, it was kind of funny because, they said we're replacing The Edge, which was roughly around 100 feet tall, and they're going to replace it with this Drop Zone Stunt Tower. It's like, oh, okay, what's that going to be? And they said it's going to be 225 feet high, I think it was. It's like, all right, well, that's going to be interesting. And then when the ride opened up, everyone said, oh, would you like to ride? It's like, well, yeah, it was okay, but where's the big curve at the bottom? Turns out a lot of people that were in love with the INTAMIN Freefall rides love that big curve at the bottom, and they love the way it changes the cab from vertical to horizontal down there. So I thought that was funny. A lot of people, I heard that comment all over the place. Where's the curve at the bottom? We like the curve at the bottom. But the new rides, of course, the INTAMIN Freefall rides now, they don't have a curve down there. It's just a straight pole sticking out of the ground. So that was one of the things people loved about the Generation 1 Freefalls. So in this video, I'm just going to talk about how the Generation 1 Freefall rides work. If you want to know how the Generation 2 and later the Giant Drop rides work, I've already got a video out on that, so you could take a look at that one. But this one was more of a fun project to go back in time and look at the older ones. So the first question is, how do you know you're on a Generation 1 Freefall? Well, they're not over about 130 feet high. They have a run out at the bottom. That's where the track turns horizontal and goes straight out and breaks down there. There are multi-cabs on a single track. So there's a lot of vehicles only on one track. And they're the only ones that look like a ride made out of scaffolding. That's a kind of a good way to put it. It looks like scaffolding that's standing up, or one of the other things, if you're familiar with older images, it looks like a launch tower that would be holding up like a spacecraft out on the launch pad. It looks pretty much like a launch tower. So for this video, I'm going to use a lot of kind of, not animation, but I'm going to use lots of still pictures that I had to make. And I made a lot of these freehand, of course, and the reason why I made them is because there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of components on these rides that aren't visible, and there's not a lot of videos of these things working. I mean, there's videos of the ride working, but these individual components that actually make the ride work, there's not a lot of video of that stuff because they're buried inside the ride. They're very hard to see, and it's only until you develop these questions do you start looking for them, and then you kind of find some of them. So I'm going to use a lot of these pictures, a lot of narrative, and I'll be using the mouse to do a lot of stuff there. So bear with me on some of these things, but I'm going to try to get through it. Okay, so let me try to explain this. This is the rough overview of how the ride is. So this is the general overview. Down here at the bottom, we have all of our cabs and all the loading positions down there. And these guys, the ride comes with, I kind of can't get a straight picture on it. It comes with, it sounds like it roughly come with 9 cabs at the most, which means general block sections, you have a handful more than 9. But we couldn't find anything really about how the block sections were laid out or how they were named. So that one's kind of, it's not so much a mystery, it's more like we're just a lot of uncertain to it. Some of the block zones we knew, some of them we did not, and you could tell by some of the accident that happened. Some of the block zones actually have been combined, so where you used to have 2 block zones is now 1, because they basically had the block zones, it sounds like they were too close together, so they basically spread them out, which means 2 joined into 1 to make the block zone bigger. So we'll start here at the bottom. We basically have the load position down here, and for this we called it load position 2, and load position 3. Now these guys, the way this ride was originally meant to be set up was that basically 3 cabs would come into this load position and they'd be moved by these little booster wheels down here, and they would be loaded 3 at a time, and then they could be dispatched all 3 at a time back into these other positions, into a waiting position. But you could also make it to where you could only load and dispatch 1 cab at a time as well. So that's those positions, and then the next step, once it comes back, the cab comes backwards, then you get into the lift shaft. The lift shaft takes you all the way up to the top of the ride, and then you have the horizontal transfer track. Once it comes out of the horizontal transfer track, you go into the free fall position, and then from the free fall position you come down into the service brakes, which this area is also called the runout. INTAMIN likes to use that phrase because on their water rides as well, it's also called the runout, where the boat splashes down out there. But you come down here into the runout, and you get into these service brakes right here, and then there are 3 very long service brakes out there. but there is one just after that over this last little drive tire there, and that is called the reversing drive and brake. And then that piece where you come down at the end is called the slope. And then as the cab drifts backwards under its own power, just gravity, back towards those low positions, you hit speed reduction drives, which are designed to, basically as the cab comes down off the slope, it starts picking up speed backwards. And those speed reduction drive motors are designed basically just to slow the cab back down to the constant speed that the rest of the drive motors are going. So the gearbox is probably a little beefier on those to catch the weight. Okay, now for this one, here is the block layout. And I made a note that this is what I can kind of gather is the original. I say kind of, again, I couldn't find anywhere. No one popped up saying that this is exactly what it was. I asked several people. Nobody can tell me the exact layout of the block system. So I kind of took the number of cabs with the blocks that were known to us and kind of just did a little exploration, expansion on them, and kind of came up with my own designations. One thing that we were certain of for sure is the Freefall block up on top was E, and the service brakes were F down there. And then, so I started with that, and I said, okay, the first load position is probably going to be A. And then so on and so forth back. So we got A, B, C, D is the lift, E is the horizontal transfer track up to the freefall position. And then underneath the freefall is basically F all the way through the reversing drive. And then F back down comes into G, and then H, I, J, K, L, and then we're back to A. So that is kind of the basic block layout of the ride. There's not a lot of boundaries on the block system, so they're kind of just like one brake is the block. So it's kind of an older mentality of rides. Normally we put something on the entry, something on the exit to properly guard it, but in this case it's not quite that correct. All right, so let's talk about the cab itself. The cab itself is a small aluminum cab. It's made out of aluminum, which is riveted together, which is typical for that type of stuff. Lots of traveling rides are made out of aluminum, riveted together. All your Eli Bridge scramblers and things like that are aluminum tubs riveted together, so it's very standard. I mean, all your airplanes are the same exact way. The way this guy is you have 4 passengers with mechanical restraints on top, and then it's got a set of 4 road wheels, and then a set of 3 idler wheels that sit at the front of the cab. Let's see here if I go into this. All right, so on the cab, there is, you notice these are homemade, of course, you could probably tell. There are these upper wheels, and there is lower wheels, and they are pink and blue. So I make that distinction throughout this entire video because there is a reason for this. The upper wheels are spaced further out than the lower wheels are. If you see right here, the pink wheel overhangs that blue wheel just slightly. From the side, you can't see it. But if you look here from the top view, which is this one right here, you can see that the pink wheels are just slightly over what the blue wheels are. So there's actually a gap differential on the two. And that comes in handy in the slope. We'll get to that later. The slope was one of the most complicated things that I had to figure out how the thing worked. Very fascinating to watch too, but figuring out how it works is a different problem. Okay, the next thing is the slides. The slides are these little gray bars right here on the side of the coach. You could also see them right here. And then there's also some right here in the front. So the slides play a very critical part in this entire thing. You notice that this vehicle has no guide wheels. It's got no guide wheels because it has these slide plates instead. INTAMIN likes to use slides on things instead of wheels, cuts down on the mechanical componentry, and the only thing is you'll see on some of these pictures, it's like you have to keep them greased because that means your whole ride works off of a lot of grease, which they are quite greasy. Here's another view of the slides pointed out there and there on the sides. Here they are, around like that. Now another thing these rides have is drive skids. So the drive skid is a place where the kicker wheels or booster wheels that are placed all over the ride can actually make contact with the vehicle. And they are necessary all over the place. There are drive skids underneath the cab. That's down here in this lower one, right there. There are drive skids on the back, which are right here. This is what drive tires contact. And there are even ones on the top, right there. So drive skids necessary for everything. And then you have the service brake. The service brake is the main brake and it's what the ride uses to slow the cab down every time. So your service brake is very big, it's very heavy duty. It's typically it's sandwiched with brass on both sides. These skids that are on the track are steel and they are water cooled. So you have the steel plate with brass on the coach. That's typically the way that guy works on a lot of them. I have seen them the other way around though. Not so much brass on the track, but I mean I've seen the service brake with nothing on it at all, just a blank piece of steel or whatever that material is made out of, which means that your consumable part is on the track down below. But I've heard stories from other mechanics about these service brakes being extremely touchy in weather, wind, everything. So they said the less work you have to do with the service brakes, the better off you are. Next is the emergency brake on the back of the cab. So there are two emergency brakes, one on the left, one on the right. On the track itself, on the ones that I've seen, only the right side is used. So they don't have one on the left side, they've only got ones on the right. Some tracks, some of the older ones that I could find pictures of had some on both sides, but the ones I found now, it seems to be that they're only on the right for some reason. Don't know why that is. But the other thing that the emergency brake does is that is the rail used for the anti-rollbacks to grab going up the vertical lift. So as it's going up the vertical lift, that emergency brake fin is passing through the anti-rollbacks as it goes up. The anti-rollbacks, if you remember from my anti-rollback video, they are cam style anti-rollbacks. They look kind of funky because they're not a true roller cam, but they basically sit in a V wedge like this, and as the coach comes through it, they kind of push the wedge apart and it's allowed to pass through. And if you stop the coach and bring it back down, those two kind of pinch back together and hold the emergency brake fins and prevent the coach from coming all the way back down. All right, there is a lot going on in this slide, so I'm going to try to point out a lot of stuff here. This is essentially the way the wheels set into the track. This is really complicated. I apologize. I tried explaining this to other people to see if my mindset was correct. Not so much like if I'm right. I was trying to convey my mind to people so they at least understood what I was talking about, because this is quite complicated. All right, so this would be best if we're thinking about the run out once the cab goes horizontal and you're laying on your back at that point. You would think about, okay, if we were to look at one side of the cab sitting in the track and then we took the top of the track off to where we could see the wheels on the inside, this is what it would look like. So on here you have, this is the cab right here, this gray area, and then right here we have these guide surfaces which actually make contact with the track in order to keep it straight. Then inside the track, and you'll see down here, those guide surfaces sit just like that. They look like kind of C's from the outside. There's your upper wheel, which is in pink again, and your lower wheel, which is in blue. And then if you looked at it from the top, this is from the top track, your upper wheel path is in pink right here, and that's this yellow path. And then your lower wheel track is this blue one right here, which is the lower wheel path. You see how these two don't align with each other? Again, that's for the slope later on. You have to remember this. You have to remember this setup, that those wheels are narrower than the other ones. very critical to remember this part right here. So the best way to start off is just with the cab. We've advanced the cab out of the load position, and now we're going to put it into the lift position. So here it is. This is the lift lower position right here, and I've illustrated there's a booster wheel or a kicker tire right there. And what this guy is doing is when it's ready, when the block is clear, it's going to advance this cab backwards. Now, when I say the block is clear, what happens to clear the block is that the first cab has gone up the lift hill, and it's gone down out into the horizontal transfer track. And then once the cab is released and it's dropped, that is when that block is considered clear. Now, from the original version, it looked like it lifted the cab up, and then as soon as it came out of this track and was out of that track, that's when that lift was clear, and it could now advance the next cab up there. And it looked like the horizontal transfer track actually had a block between the lift and the drop position, so there could theoretically be 3 cabs up there. When I was talking with Rich, he was relaying to me that a really old knowledge of the ride back from when it was brand new, even though it was a transplant, some of that knowledge comes in. He was saying that they were told to e-stop it if they ever got 3 cabs up on top, which he was saying the way the block system was set up, he didn't even know how that was possible to get 3 cabs up on the top of there. But if you break the blocks back apart down to what I think INTAMIN had them originally set at, or Giovanola, whoever it was, what they had them originally set at, then you would be able to have a cab that was in the lift, a cab that was in the horizontal transfer position, and then a cab that was in the drop track. So you had 1, 2, 3. That was possible, but they said to never let that condition happen. So it looks like an eventuality could have let that happen, but didn't. The coach is lifted by this thing right here. It's called the lift engagement bar. That's the actual term for it. The lift engagement bar sat in between 2 chains, which went right behind the vehicle. And I tried getting a picture of this. I couldn't really find any. And we tried getting some pictures from behind. I actually had a viewer that was going to a park with one of these, and they offered to take pictures for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, please, whatever you could find. And they took a lot of pictures for me, so I really appreciate that. And but we couldn't get any of that lift engagement bar because it is buried inside that component, and it's hard to see. I took a couple of videos that I found that were really high quality, and I lightened them up trying to see the lift engagement bar. It's really not much, honestly. There's 2 of them. It works just like a vertical lift hill. There's always 2 in operation. So the one goes up and it lets the cab off on top. And then right as it lets that cab off on top of there, the other one is at the very bottom. So it's like, okay, and then as soon as it starts to advance, as that cab goes out and it's ready to grab the next one, it just has to rotate a little bit and then it's ready for the next cab. And then as that cab lifts up, they go across each other right in the middle, just like a lot of vertical lift hills do. But that is a lift engagement bar. That is what's lifting the cab, and it lifts it right on that service brake fin in the back, that service fin. So as the cab goes backwards, it starts to lift this little triangular wedge, which keeps it from coming back out of the track as it advances backwards. And then once it's inside the track all the way, that mechanical wedge simply just drops back into place and it locks. Now, here's what that looks like. So looking at this from the side, this is the area we're talking about right here. We zoom in on this. There we go. You can see that there is the bars that the wheels will push up on, and it lifts this wedge up and out of the way and then lets it drop back down into place. These cylinders aren't for lifting the wedge out of the way. What they are is that this is a little air check valve, and it allows air to freely come in one direction as it's lifting, And then when that wheel gets in all the way and that thing has to drop back down, instead of slamming back down, they use this cylinder as a shock absorber. So what they do is they throttle the air with this device going back out the other direction. So it's able to freely just go up, and then when the wheel gets out of the way, it goes nice down slowly and prevents all those components from just banging into each other. See, it goes up and then it comes right back down in. At that point, the wheels are locked in and it's ready to go. Up, up, and away. At that point, nothing locks in those lower wheels, but you have them sitting on top of that lift engagement bar. You have the fin sitting there, so it's going to be very hard to try to kick those wheels back outwards going the other way. Here's another view. You can watch this come right in, slows down, puts it right into lift, and stops. There we go. Now, the reason for that is because that cab is shaped like an L, and the center of gravity is not to the back, it's right here. So it's lifting from the back. So what they do is that if you lift it from the back, well, the whole thing wants to go forward. So your bottom wheels are going to stay put. The whole thing wants to pivot there. So it's actually those top wheels that you have to grab and prevent them from going back forward as the cab's lifted up. We have that in there, so now we are simply just going to start lifting up on it. And then again, you could see where the top wheel is trapped in there. The bottom wheel is now trapped in there as well. But now the whole vehicle is going up. Now as it's going up, the one thing I don't have a lot of good video of, but I have some of it here and there, is the anti-rollbacks. As they pass by the anti-rollbacks, again, they're a wedge-shaped device. So it allows them to pass through, and then it comes back and they bite in if they need to stop it. On the accident that happened in the late 80s, I think it was, at the edge in Illinois, that accident happened. It went up, and they had those anti-rollbacks every, I don't know what it was originally, say 20 feet or something like that. They had those anti-rollbacks going up there, and then what happened was that the cab stopped and started to come back down, and the anti-rollbacks for some reason didn't grab it, or it came loose or something, and basically the vehicle started to drop. And it went through those anti-rollbacks, it went through the ones that were there, and then landed down at the bottom. The original report said something about a cable broke and prevented the anti-rollbacks from grabbing. Honestly, not sure. I don't have any good pictures of how those mechanisms work. I know they're V-style pinch like you would an elevator fall brake, this is kind of an elevator. So I know they're V-pinch styles, but I don't really have good solid pictures as to this cable they're talking about. Maybe they were all run with a cable holding them open, and the cable was supposed to pull them shut, and they didn't. I don't know, but despite what the thought is out there, is that the cab did not fall down on top of another cab. The other cabs were not allowed to advance into the shaft until that one was up top. So the cab just came down with nothing underneath it and landed down there. It did injure the kids that were riding that one, and they had to go to the hospital. I believe they were treated and released later that day, if I remember the article correctly. But it didn't land on top of another cab. So that was one thing I wanted to definitely say about that. Okay, now we're going to move to the top of the ride. This was, I got this off of a video, and I paused it midway, and even then I had to zoom in on the video, so it's not the best quality. But this is the best picture I could find of those anti-rollbacks, really like kind of the way they work. As you could see them here, there's two. There's one on each side. The original ones were like a good distance apart from each other, but after that accident, they moved them to literally a cab width apart. So essentially the cab is always in two anti-rollbacks. They're every like 6 feet going up the lift hill now. It's pretty tight. But yeah, this is them. You can see there's a little wedge on top that's designed to catch the fin. There's also a little opening on the bottom, and they basically just V apart as the fin passes through. And then if the fin ever tries to come back down, they basically just bite back down into the thing to stop it. Again, not sure. This here looks more like a cable, like a sensor cable, not a mechanical cable. And then on the other side, I can't really see it. All right, so we've gone up the tower now. We're gone into we're up into the horizontal transfer track. And now what has to happen here is that they always lift these guys up past the horizontal transfer track, which is this bottom piece down here. And they lift them up because of this little wedge device right there. It actually has to go in, and as it goes up, that guy pops in underneath the wheels. So if you can imagine, it's a wedge like landing sitting there. And then as the wheel comes up, it pushes that wedge out of the way. And then as soon as it's above it, that wedge just kind of drops back in. And then the ride goes up a little bit more, and then it sets it back down. And as it sets it down on that wedge, the wedge allows it to roll forward out of the lift shaft. And then at the same time, it clears the lifting bar in the back. And then the vehicle is completely on the horizontal transfer track at that point. So let's see if I go through my animation here a little bit. Okay, so it set the vehicle down. Now that upper wheel and the lower wheels have come down. See, it's rolled off of that wedge. It's rolled off of that little wedge right there. And now the vehicle has started to roll forward. This is just enough right here that this kicker tire down here is able to grab onto the front of the vehicle and start to move it. And that's what pulls it out the rest of the way. I've been told by people that used to work on these rides that this little wedge is not much, and there's nothing else assisting the vehicle out of that shaft. So on days, they said it could even just be really windy if the lift bars drop off the vehicle up there and a big gust of wind comes along and pushes that vehicle into that shaft at the exact same time. That vehicle will essentially not get enough momentum forward to make that lower kicker wheel right there, and essentially just comes to a stop, and then it stalls right there. And then the ride's broken down, it's stuck at that point in time. They have to go up and literally push it forward. So once it comes down, it's come down off of there. At the same time, much harder to understand down here, but at the same time, these wheels down here on the bottom have now gone onto a very small, thin little flat bar rail that sits out there. Because again, the coach is cantilevered off to the front. It wants to go forward, but the wheels are pinned inside the track, so it could only go a little bit forward, whatever the slop tolerance is. So they put those little kicker wheels down there, those little wheels on that rail, so when it sets down and it comes forward, those wheels land onto that little flat bar rail as it goes over. This picture that I was able to get explains this a little better, but it's still kind of hard to see. There's a lot going on here. So behind the cab right here, this is the cab. The wheels have locked in there, and it's going forward now. But as that front goes over, there is this little flat bar right here. Very hard to see. It's very hard to distinguish on there. But that flat bar is what the front of the cab is riding on right now. And it goes there, and it goes off over to there. And then you see it all stops out here in the drop area. And it also stops here where the wheels have to go down through the track as well. Here's a different view of the same thing. You could see there is the rail right there, and then it passes through out to the front right there. Again, this stuff was really hard to actually see and photograph. There is a really cool video out there that they took a 360 degree camera onto this particular ride. This is a Hollywood Tower. I don't remember which park it's at right now, but this is Hollywood Tower, Paris, maybe. I'm probably going to get grilled for that one, but it's okay. So find the 360 degree view. I'll see if I can remember where it is, and I'll try to link it down below. It is super awesome to be able to go up and watch this. Like after I explain how this works, you can watch that 360 degree view, and then when it goes up there and starts getting into this horizontal transfer, you could take, like I use my phone, you could take your phone and start moving all around and like, oh yeah, look, there are those things. Oh yeah, I spent probably 30 minutes watching that video, keep looking at things as it goes. It was really cool. All right, so for this guy, we'll move ahead one step. So once it's set the vehicle down, we have now, like it's moved out of the way. Now at that point, that lifting bar is going to make its way around that top sprocket again, over the top, and then start going back down the other side. Now that's happening while everything else is going on the other side here. At this point in the video, if you haven't already, please make sure you like and subscribe and give me some comments down there. Let me know if you got any fun stories to add on to these. And then let me know if you want to see something for topics in the future too. I'm always up for new stuff. I've got a list of things that I'm making, but sometimes somebody says something and I'm like, oh yeah, let's do that one real quick. That really sounds like fun. I do enjoy getting that information. You guys come up with a lot of good ideas for videos, so let me know if you got them. You can also email me at ryantheriotmechanic@yahoo.com. Let's get back into the video. Okay, so there is a lapse in between the two where the vertical and the horizontal pick up. So what I was talking about was the end of the vertical. And now I'm kind of go over the same exact things in the horizontal track itself. But I'll kind of start back from the beginning here and say there's two kicker wheels up there, one for the bottom of the cab, one for the top of the cab. And then there's also a anti-rollback cam, which is sitting inside of the shaft here. Now this guy I thought was actually preventing the wheels from coming backwards, but when you look at other pictures, when you look at a picture like this, you'll see that it's actually not, the wheels are in the C channel right here. This guy is off to the side. It's actually preventing the actual axle itself from coming backwards, despite the wheels. So these are actually axle anti-rollbacks. And then there's your upper track, your lower track. Here's the drop track where the two combined. And then there's the blue right there. That's where the wheels are running on the bottom. And then there's the other blue on top. That is where the upper wheel is running underneath that. Because on the front of the cab, there's two wheels on top of each other, and they're basically pinned between those two spaces as it's moving along. Because if you allow the cab to go up and tilt backwards, that means this kicker wheel right here would have no traction. It would just lift up on the cab and stall at that point. Let's see if I can do this. All right. So as you see right here, what I'm pointing at right here is the cab. This is how the anti-rollback axle works, like this. So as the thing's driving forward, and then there's my slope piece up there as well. That's for the upper wheel. So and then as the upper wheel, as the cab comes out and progresses, there's this other cam that sits up there, and this guy prevents the upper wheel from coming backwards out of that shaft. Once it lands in there, momentum, everything says it should go forward. But they said just in case, this upper wheel, this upper little cam right here puts itself behind the axle to prevent the axle from coming backwards. So it's essentially holding that wheel up there. All right, this is the same ride, different video. This guy is not attached right here. It must be broken. But it's not really like, oh my gosh, the thing is in disarray. So INTAMIN Giovanola used a lot of shocks on this ride. They used a ton of shocks all over the place that just are designed that when something comes up to hit it, instead of just a solid hit, it simply just takes it and absorbs that last little bit just to try to slow down the wear and tear on some of that componentry. So there's tons of these shocks everywhere on everything. They could use pneumatics. They can use, this looks like an Endine shock sitting there, which Endines are just metered hydraulic on the inside. That's all they are, spring return in that case. So what we're looking at here is that there is that cam I was talking about. This guy, the wheel rolls out behind it, and this surface right here puts itself right behind that axle. As the axle comes by, it pushes down and then goes click right behind it and prevents the axle from coming back out of that shaft. Because of that speed forward and the sudden impact with the other side of the rail, it took that and it said, okay, they buffered that. That's what that little mushroom-shaped knob is right there. It's a hook to, well, this spring, this Indine shock that's hanging there right now, but it's hooked to that guy so that when it comes up to impact that, it slows that wheel down a little bit and prevents it from just hammering into the structure up there. Next, we're going to look at the drop mechanism. This is the mechanism right down here. This is my revision 1 of the mechanism. I actually changed it a little bit, so you can see if I go forward on that. Okay. So this is the drop mechanism that sits down right there. It's complicated. I go over that in a little bit. I just wanted to show you that's where it is. All right, so we're going to bring the cab up so it comes up that shaft. I'm going to make it clear, make it easier to see. So as it comes up, it gets all the way to that top again, and then that slope snaps in underneath the wheel. There it is. And then the cab comes down and starts to roll forward. I've got this video. This video is from, I believe it's Shockedbywater. I tried getting a hold of the guy, say, hey, I'd like to use this video on this particular fabrication of this video. Never got an answer back. Never got any sort of content back. So hopefully I'm not doing something wrong here, but I'm full credit. It's not my video. It's this guy, Shockedbywater, had a lot of this particular ride from Rocky Point Park, which was really cool because this is like one of the original versions that's really fast, and we'll go over that in a little bit because these early rides, the first ones that came out, INTAMIN, Giovanola, had these things cooking with speed. I mean, they were going fast. So it was pretty cool to see. But what I want to show you in this video is you're going to look right here in this area, and what we're looking for is the slope, which is this guy right here. We're looking for this to be able to see that on the side of that tower. All right, so you probably won't be able to see this the first time through. I got it slowed down. You see it right there? That's the piece. You see how it comes back in after the vehicle goes up? See how it's out right now? Now watch as it comes in. That goes in. So that's that piece dropping in right next to it. That's what the cab is going to set back down on. There it is in full speed. And then it comes out. Okay, so we've gone over that slope now. We'll go back to this. We've gone over that slope. We'll go back this way. And we said, okay, we're on the slope now. We've dropped down. Now our front wheels are right here. That bottom one is resting on top of this blue piece, and this top one is going to go right underneath this light blue piece right there. The front of the gondola is on this kicker wheel, and then we're going to start advancing it forward. Now, once it goes past that point, if you've seen this right here, goes past this point, this axle anti-rollback is now going to grab right there. It's going to click back up. It prevents it from going backwards down the lifting shaft. Then we're going to move this forward. And then what I wanted to illustrate here is that, see these front wheels that were in the guide? Now they're in nothing. They're in the middle of open air. So what keeps it is this back wheel right here. That is actually holding the weight of the cab right there as these pass over the opening. So we'll advance it a little bit further. And now these front two wheels plus the guides are back into this area. And now this guy is floating over that midair. That's how it transitions past that gap in the track. And then we're going to move this all the way forward underneath this kicker wheel here, which is now pushing the cab out the rest of the way. And now the cab is fully in the drop track. Now we're in the drop position. So that little purple cam is right here, and that's stuck right behind that wheel. If you look at that, you can see that there. That little purple cam is sitting right behind that axle, behind that wheel up there. So that's what it looks like right there. That's where it is. All right. Now, look at this drop mechanism now. There are two pieces to this drop mechanism. Its actuator is right here. It's actually just a very large pneumatic cylinder that sits back underneath there. There's one on each side for each wheel. And it's got this little cam that sits out there underneath these wheels. This little cam is actually what does the dropping. The thing you could see from the outside is this guy right here. That is they're the safety bars, I believe it was. But those sit underneath the emergency brake fins. The emergency brake fins are sitting right there. Those sit underneath that. So this is for in case that cam has broken, that assembly is broken and that cam is open. So essentially the vehicle is being pushed into an accidentally open shaft where it could collide with the vehicle underneath, assuming there's one down there. So what they did is they put these safety bars underneath there to where even if this cam broke and fell apart completely, it would catch the brake fins and stop there. Because it's the only part you could see with it in operation really, everyone thinks that those two bars sticking out underneath there get removed and that's what drops. It's not. They're tied together with this cam right here. So all three of these components work together and they work at the same time. So as we're pulling this cam out of the way, it opens up this cylinder. As the cylinder actuates, it pulls this cam out of the way and these bars out of the way at the exact same time. And that looks like this. So we've moved that cam out of the way and that safety bar has come away from the wheels, or come away from the emergency fin at the same time, and now this vehicle is just free to drop straight down. And there it goes. And then once it's cleared from that area and it pops up back down there again, this little cam and this mechanism simply just push right back forward again, and it's ready for the next vehicle. Alright, so let's try to watch this video. We'll do this real time so you can see it, and then we'll slow it back down. Here is real time. This is zoomed way in, of course. This is zoomed in like 3 times, so apologize. Comes out, gets in that drop position, stops, and then that cam releases. There we go. Now most people can just see those safety bars. Most people can just see those safety bars, which are right here. There's one safety bar. There's another safety bar. So what we'll do now, see there's the 2 safety bars. But what we're going to look at is right here actually. Watch this guy right there. You see that? Watch it again. See how all those components work together. So that is truly what's doing the releasing right there. Pause that right there. It is this little trap door right here. That is actually what does the releasing, not the safety bars. But again, safety bars are all you can see. But that little guy right there. Okay, so we're going to start back. We'll look at this is demon drop now. We'll see there's that cam again that holds that upper axle in place. Out here, they've replaced a lot of the limit switches with proximity switches, which is great. That's what you need to do. But you can see the release mechanism in the background here. Here's your safety bars. And then there's those guide bars right there, some L brackets and stuff that everything runs on for the guide wheels to pass over that gap. But you could see the little trap door sitting right out there. That's the one that gets removed underneath those wheels. And then, yep, this was the best picture I can get of it right here. There is the release cylinder right there, and it's tied to this actuator arm, which is tied to the trap door, which pulls back in out of the track. And then it also at the same time pivots this safety bar to pull those safety bars out from underneath there. So this is, I think, the best thing. Best way you could see it right there. Okay, I don't have fancy animation for the brakes working because they're simply just, they're brakes. They're pinch style brakes. They grab that fin and just slow it down as it goes through, adjustable. So we're going to start off with the slope. This is the very complicated part down at the end. You're like, what? This is the complicated part? Everything you said before was easy? It's like, yeah. Giovanola and INTAMIN really, they made it complicated, but it's okay. It's great. I love this sort of stuff. This is what I love to see. So we're going to start with the slope right here. And I'll give you this is your run track right here. This is the reversing brake right here. There's actually, it's hard to see, but on videos you can actually see it. There is a actual brake right here. It's not just this wheel. There is a physical brake right there. And then this is a trap door. This yellow part here is a trap door. And then this track right here is where your upper wheel go. Remember, that's the pink one. And this track right here is where your lower or your blue wheel goes. There is another lifting bar type device which actually grabs the axles as it drops down, and its whole job is to slow the vehicle's descent down as it comes down this drop. All it is inside of there is a clutch that is allowing the whole assembly to basically turn backwards against a predetermined amount of friction. An engineer I talked with that has much experience with this ride, he said he redesigned the clutch for this particular area of the slope so many times. He's like, I could design a clutch for that ride in my sleep, but that's a lot. This little yellow guy is also a trap door, opens up down. Now, the thing that was really hard to convey to people is that this black line is a differential between two types of metal. It's actually an offset. It's kind of hard to understand, but basically, if you were to measure outside to outside, you say right here in this area, it is, we'll just say it's 60 inches apart. And if you measure down here in this area, even though they look the same, this area down here is actually like 56 inches apart. It's a little narrower down there. And then that gap, that little black line, shows the differential between the two. Very critical. All right, so the slope is right here in this valley. You notice that the track comes down, it's sloped down this way, and then it curves back up the other way. And the reason for that, they wanted that coach to be in the low spot right there. So they wanted to assist it down here, but if it got too far past, they wanted it to come backwards to this area. So that's the lowest point, is where the slope is located. Here comes our cab. It's on its back. There's our upper wheels and our lower wheels. It overshoots the trap door and stops in the brake and reversing over here. At that point, the little yellow trap door opens up right here. And now it's ready to kick this guy backwards. So I'm going to do this in a couple steps, but here we go. This is the path of the blue wheel. This is your lower wheel, see? Blue wheel goes down here. We're going to roll the thing forward now. And then the upper wheel rides that little black line because the upper wheels are wider than the lower wheels are. So it stays in that wider upper trough. And then the lower wheels go into this other trough right down here. Now, remember the slides on the outside of the cab. The slides are what center the entire thing in this process. So if the slides weren't there, or if the slides were broken, the thing would be allowed to shift and walk left and right, and then it would mess everything up, all this stuff. So you get the upper wheel that comes into that lower track right there, and then as it comes forward, it actually starts to drop down into the lower track, but now it's on this little catch assembly right here. All right, here's what that catch assembly looks like. It's on two chains that go up and over the gear. The gear and the chains are necessary because once the coach is down, they turn on and move this assembly back to the top position, waiting for the next coach. But it essentially just has two big inline shocks on it, and it catches the entire assembly, and they catch the actual axle. You'll notice on the axle on some of them, they actually have two shiny marks on it where this guy catches each time, and it comes back down. And then you can see here, like, this is a shot from the inside. You see there's the upper track, and there's the lower track right there. And then here's this assembly in the middle. Here is the trap door assembly right here, this guy. So the cab comes in right in this upper guy right here. And then this door opens up. And then as it comes backwards, just a distance separates the two. The upper wheels come out this way, and they go through this guy right here, which actually is an axle, anti-rollback again, so it pinches the axle off in that side. And then the lower wheels are ready to come back down this part of the slope right there. So we'll move this forward again, and you can see that little follower is moving its way down. Now, as it gets down to this area, the whole vehicle starts needing to go backwards and then back up. And that is the reason there is this funky little dip right here inside this guy, because it comes down and has to allow the wheels to go down into the dip right there. And then as the cab starts to right itself, well, it starts to get taller. So it actually has to go back up the other side right here like that, and then continue on its way down. And then it starts getting back on drive tires again. And at this point, there's also these front roller wheels right here are also back rolling on top of another steel plate again. So once it leaves this area, you're on the lower wheel plus these two wheels down here. And then this little trap door closes back again afterwards. And then that follower comes back up to the top of the track, and its ride's reset, and it's ready for its next cab. Okay, so if we go backwards. Okay, let's look at that now without me talking about it. Let's just look at that a little bit. Okay. Now we get to see that in motion, what it looks like actually at the ride. There we go. Nice even. You see those upper wheels going through there? Yep, that's what it looks like. Yep, you can see those wheels traveling right through there. Pretty cool, right? So once they're off the slope, they pretty much just roll back down over the reduction drive wheels and then back into the load position again. There's not too much else from there. I don't feel a need to like really go into that. So I wanted to look at some of the operational aspects of the ride now. The first video I've got up, this is from this is that Shockedbywater video, and it's the original Rocky Point stuff, which is one thing to say is that INTAMIN and Giovanola, when they did this, they built these things incredibly fast. Like, they are super fast. So it's really quite amazing to watch. So let's take a ride real quick. Yeah. That was fast, right? Holy crap, that was fast. Yes, this is maintenance filming on the ride, it looks like. They're doing some troubleshooting here. Awesome. No pause. And you're on your back. Oh, I know a lot of us can feel that. When we watch this video and go, oh yeah, I feel that. All right, so they're standing up there filming this while the ride's in testing, but in operation basically. And it's really quite amazing to watch just the speed at which this stuff happens. It's incredible. Now I asked Rich, I'm like, hey, do you guys have the ability to stall the cab up on top? And he said, a little bit, but too much, and you fault the ride out. Now, one thing I should say here, you notice how the restraints are open. Perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It wasn't till more recently when some manufacturers, people are sending empty trains out on roller coasters, and they're finding cracks on the restraints because they would slam down as they got into like the first drop and stuff. But for a lot of rides, this is perfectly acceptable if the ride's unloaded, just to leave the restraints open and let it cycle. Not a big deal. So it goes up there, comes down, hits that slope, drives forward. Kicker wheels push it forward. Right, drop. Now, let me pause it right here. See down here at the bottom? Oops, try to get this out of the way. Sorry about that. Down here at the bottom, there is this guy, and there's a proximity switch, and this switch right here. It's not until this switch is depressed, actually pushed in by the cab, that's what tells the ride that it's ready to drop. So if the cab didn't drift forward far enough for some reason and stop short of making that switch, the cab wouldn't drop. It would just sit there forever. All right, let me put this back underway. There it goes. Stops in the brake, then reverses back down. Watch how fast this comes up this shaft. It's crazy. Wow, that is so fast. You see that drop in? There you go. And down she goes. Through those reduction brakes. You can see the big reduction brakes down there in the center. You can see that. Those are your big brakes down here, and the emergency brakes are off to the side on this side. And this person continues to film test after test. Don't know why, but we've got a passenger on it now. Fun stuff. I love watching Freefall rides work. They're absolutely awesome. Yep. The second guy in knows it's coming. There it goes. Enjoy your drop. These are just such fun rides to work. The amount of stuff that's happening in one time is just, it's ridiculous. Everyone's acting up for the camera. What's up? And he got some video going back down too. See that going out there, hits those limit switches at the end, and drops. And you can see those brakes down there. See, there's your emergency brakes in the run out, and then there's your service brakes down the center. Man, that's fast. Just incredibly fast. Man, it's amazing how fast that is. So we're going to watch this one. I found this video. I asked this person, can I use this on this particular video? And they said yes. So thank you very much. It's basically K1NDAKA 88. So basically King Ka 88. Stuck on Hollywood Tower at Movieland Park. Video. Supposed to be an O in there. Sorry. But this one is hilarious because there is a line that the guy says when they get stuck, and I just it made my whole day when I heard it. So watch this. Also, you can kind of get an idea how rough some of these are by the audio. Go back in there. Remember how fast the other one was.
Merkst du schon, wenn du nicht hinterher lehnst? Au! Yes.
Those are the anti-rollbacks, by the way.
Ah, but the Mr. Really. Mr. Really does. So. Problem.
Oh my gosh.
Look.
Just I have that guy stuck in my head, man. Just a problem. So basically, when it came out of the shaft, it looked like either it wasn't told to advance forward, or the booster wheel might have tripped the motor breaker or something like that, and the cab just didn't advance forward. It's stuck in the shaft right now. It's come out of the lift shaft, but it's stuck in between on the horizontal transfer. So it's not in the drop position, it's not in the lift part right now. So they're getting a walk off the ride right now, which is pretty cool. You don't really get a chance to see stuff like that, so it's nice to see. It's fun to see stuff like this.
Okay.
Yeah, really. Because of the water, I wanted the water for. Ah, okay.
Kind of see some of the inner workings up there, some of the controller information and things like that. That's pretty cool.
Have you problem to work here? No.
That big jug of fluid right there, I'm guessing, is the fog juice that runs up there, sprays out. And then basically they get a nice long walk back down the tower to the ground again. Yeah, something you don't normally get to see, do you? I thought that was just hilarious, though. Problem. And this is another picture I had, kind of a better view of the slope area that I was talking about earlier. Here, how you could see, there's the run track that the slope is in. And then you could see that the upper wheels follow that same path down here. That's where the upper wheels go. And you could see that the track is flush. It's at the exact same level. But when it comes to the lower wheel track, you could see that it's inset. See the gray part? That's the lower wheels. So you could see right here that there's a differential. There's an offset to it, where the lower wheels are at a narrower gauge than the upper wheels are. So that's what makes that entire process work. So the breakdowns would include lots of flat tires. If you flatten a tire on this thing or drive tire on there, the cab is going to stall pretty much almost anywhere where it is. It might kind of limp its way through, but pretty much broken down. So good news is that the stuff isn't extremely heavy. So if it's in the right place, someone can give it a little push, a little nudge, and say, all right, off with you. Speaking of the slope, I was told a story where basically the guides on the side of the cab broke apart on one of them and allowed the cab to shift over. And so what actually happened was that when it went down the slope here, use this picture, when it went down the slope, instead of the lower wheels following this lower track, they actually followed the upper track on one cab. So it actually pushed the cab forward and the whole cab went this upper way. So what actually happened is that it went forward and it picked up speed because there was nothing slowing it at that point. And the front wheels actually fell out of that opening. And the rear wheels were still pinned in that U. So it actually went down forward and then just went upside down. So it hung the entire cab of people upside down in the slope there. And the mechanic was telling me, he said we went up there and we looked at him and we were like, it's going to be a little bit for us to fix this thing. Another thing from the control side is that these earlier models used an Omron PLC in them. And the Omrons didn't require any special keys or programming to put in what's called a force. That's where you can just go in and tell the logic to do something, and you could force the logic to do it. When the logic says, hey, we want to open up this gate, And the rides, the bits in place say, well, you can't do that. You can go in and do what's called a force and force the logic to just open the gate regardless of what the logic says. Well, most processors, you need special keys put in. The processor has to be in like a program step mode, and you have to go and do all sorts of things because you're bypassing the program. These early Omron style ones, they said they didn't need that at all. You could just go into the computer and just go click, click, click and force the thing open. So they had one where it went up to the top and it went out all the way into the freefall position and stopped. And then they're like, okay, well, we have to go out there and get the people off. And they said those people were like freaking out, like, they didn't know what was going on. He said they were pretty freaked out. So they went up there and they're like, we went off, and they're like, yeah, we'll get you off. And they had to get come-alongs and stuff and pull the thing backwards into that horizontal transfer so they can actually get them off, and they had to like block it and secure it, do all that stuff, right? So the guy downstairs, which was the controls guy, radioed up to the people on the tower, and they're like, I said, hey, are you clear of the cab? And the guy that was on the main mechanic in control, he said, hey, are you clear of the cab? And he kind of like gets his radio and goes off to the side, and he's like, don't drop the cab. And he goes, yeah, okay, I won't do that. And he goes, okay. It's like, but you guys are clear, right? No one's standing around it, like no one's got their hand on anything. And he's like, don't drop the cab. Yeah, no, but you guys are clear, right? Yeah, we're clear. Click. And the cab drops. He said the rest of us stood up there. He says for probably another 20 minutes. He says you could hear those people all the way on top of that thing screaming and yelling at the people down there. They wanted managers there and everything. I was just like, oh my gosh. Oh, man. So I probably honestly forgot to put in some stuff to this video. It's been long, but I had to do so much work on this to put all these pieces together with all the little like drawings and stuff put together. It is a lot of time. I'm sure I will have a ton of people still asking plenty of questions in the comments. Go for it. I feel like I know it front to back at this point in time. I'm not sure. Might need to make a follow-up video for some of the stuff I missed probably, but I think in my head I've gone through it properly. Again, thank you to Rich. Thank you for everyone who's gotten me photos and videos. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for everyone who's reached out and said, hey, I know this little bit of information, or I know that little bit of information. It really is a community effort when everyone works together. It's great stuff. So again, thank you very much. As usual, if you haven't already, you want to see more stuff like this, like and subscribe, do all the stuff downstairs there. It helps out. I do appreciate that. If you want to contact me, you can contact me via email at ryantheriotmechanic@yahoo.com. You can always just ask questions down below. I typically can answer them if it's not going to be a very long question. If it is something more in depth, I prefer an email. Let's see, what else am I missing? Oh yeah, stay off the air gates.